ATF arm brace rule. What do we do with it? Welcome to another installment of the Connecticut Gun Bench. Today's video is brought to you by P.A.N. Firearms, LLC, P.A.N. Firearms for NRA certification and multifaceted gun training. You can reach us at 203-300-6343 or use our website at www.panfirearmsllc.com. As always, there'll be a link in the description box below. And before I start, I'd like to just say, if you like my content and want to support my content, I do have a Patreon link set up in the description box below. But other than that, let's talk about this. As we know, January 31st, the ATF released their arm brace rule, and it's now in the registry. So it is now effective, giving us 120 days to comply with it. Now, if I believe it was yesterday, February 1st, the ATF had a webinar where you could ask questions about this arm brace rule. And from the few sources that I personally know and what I've read, the ATF kind of skirted a lot of questions and didn't seem to have answers for others. And when I say others, I mean other questions, not necessarily others, even though they did sort of address that whole issue. From what I've read and what I understand, the cleanest and simplest way to make yourself legit is to remove the arm brace. And if you have a registered SBR, you can actually keep it because the SBR can actually use the arm brace. If you don't, you have to completely remove it from your possession, which is unfortunate. Now, the ATF has said that they will not process any Form 1s or for SBRs from states that have bans on SBRs, which they specifically mentioned that Connecticut was one of them. When they were asked about others, they skirted the question and said, well, refer to the state law, which means they had no answer. Or they did have an answer, but just didn't want to be held liable for anything if anything were to go sideways with their decision. So at this point in time, removing the arm brace is the only rule. And there was information floating around that if you had a 16-inch upper, that is also being completely kiboshed. Barrel length is not an issue. If you have an arm brace on it, you have to remove the arm brace. Because, well, for the state of Connecticut, because then the state of Connecticut can come back and say that you have a rifle because the ATF has now classified arm braces as stocks. And there's a lot of information. I'm going to leave as much information as I can in the description box where you can look through. But from what I am seeing, the cleanest answer is to remove the arm brace completely. They are actually saying that the buffer tube is fine as long as the buffer tube is part of the operation of the firearm. So if you have an AR platform, you can keep the buffer tube. Don't put a tennis ball on the end because then that gets into that whole language that we're using about surface area to be used to shoulder. So don't go that direction. But we do have some good news because immediately 2 lawsuits were filed against this. One from the Firearms Policy Coalition, I think it's Mock versus Garland. And then there's another one for Gun Owners of America, also filed one. And what they're trying to do is to put a stay of execution or a hold on this law until it can be heard in the courts. So I want to come over here to this. This is ABC News. New gun regulations on stabilizing braces targeted in court. Conservative and gun rights group challenged new federal regulations on pistols with stabilizing braces in court Tuesday, suing to block a gun control action touted by President Joe Biden after the accessories were used in 2 mass shootings. 2 lawsuits were filed in federal court in Texas against the move to treat the guns like short-barreled rifles, a weapon like a sawed-off shotgun that had been heavily regulated since the 1930s. The cases argue that millions of people have guns with braces. Remember, the ATF said braces were fine. Now all of a sudden they just made a rule. So this is creating some real problems for us, and use them to make firing more accurate and therefore safer, according to the lawsuit filed on behalf of 3 veterans by the conservative Milwaukee-based Wisconsin Institute of Law and Liberty. They said in the lawsuit that the new rule from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Explosives forces owners into unthinkable choices of removing the brace, submitting to a national registry, or opening themselves up to possible charges. The new rule unlawfully usurps congressional authority by significantly expanding the definition of rifle under federal law, and with it imposes potential criminal liabilities on millions of Americans exercising their Second Amendment rights. The lawsuit argues a decade ago, the ATF found that the braces did not make guns similar to short-barrel rifles. So they did not do this by law, they did this by rule. That's where the argument comes in. The ATF cannot make law. A good case to look at is Vanderstock versus Garland, which concerned 80% receivers, where the judge said that, basically paraphrasing, that the ATF cannot make unlawful rules. So, the group Firearms Policy Coalition also challenged the new rule in another lawsuit filed in Texas. At least 3 million guns with stabilized braces are in circulation in the U.S., according to ATF. Other estimates place the number much higher, the suit claims. The plaintiffs are asking the court to block enforcement of the rule. I don't need to get into all that, but it's interesting that the agency has declined to comment on this, citing that this is pending legislation and they can't comment on it. So there it is. It's in effect. We can only hope that there's a stay put on this rule until it goes to the courts. Then that kind of absolves us for the moment from having to do anything. But if it doesn't if the stay of execution on this doesn't come through, then, as I said before, having read everything that I've read and gone back and forth through different sources, removing the arm brace at this point in time is the only clean way I see of doing it in Connecticut, because we can't really register them as SBRs. Now, it opens some conundrums, because the state of Connecticut, for their 2023 gun control laws, said they want to extend the assault weapon ban registry to allow people with others to then register their others as assault weapons. If they do that, then you should be able to actually register them as SBRs, technically. But we'll see how that plays out. But there it is. Here we go. Every time there's more information, I will get it out to you. But let me know what you think. As always, you can leave your comments in the comment section below. And as always, any statements of violence or statements that lead to violence will be removed. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you're notified the next time the video goes live. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.